we get to do this in the United States of America.
Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
But they're putting cameras all over the country.
Yeah, that's
the last administration was censoring people all over the internet. This administration is allowing people to be tracked everywhere.
Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. It's a special 2:00 edition because we've got a really, really special guest. This is, I think, the first time a lot of people are going to know about what, not the people watching today, but we're going to be talking about automatic license plate readers, flock cameras, and believe me, there's a proliferation of all of this, not just in the United States, but in Canada. We're going to be talking to somebody who knows what they're talking about on this issue. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
We're doing it live as we do here every day. So this is a subject that, once again, as I've explained about like data collection centers and other issues, a lot of conservative-minded people are saying, wonderful idea, it's good for law and order, just totally ignoring the surveillance element here, the spying element. So I want to welcome aboard Sarmad Rafi, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey there, it's a pleasure to get on the show for the first time.
Well, I think we've got a lot to talk about and a lot to explore. I just wanted to have a look at your website first of all, because it is that's what we want. Because I also want to look at your map here. So Panopti.ca, which of course comes from Panopticon.
Yeah, Jeremy.
I had to look that up, my friend, because I Tucker Carlson recently referred to this. And so we looked it up, and yes, it goes back to Jeremy Bentham, but let's have a look at your front page here where you spell out what ALPRs are, automatic license plate readers. Yeah. And these things are all over the country. As you say, 640 mapped in Canada. Now,
that we know of, yeah.
Yeah, that we know of. And I want to go to your map here because it's quite interesting how I'll look at Toronto because that seems to be the most, shall we say, picturesque, because Vancouver, of course, is also being afflicted with these. But here's a map of Toronto, and here's all the automatic license plate readers, and it's almost like a perfect curve from one part of the lake to the other, right? And almost encircling. Well, can't say encircling, but in terms of at least the landmass, it's isolated the city here. It's surrounded by, on the land at least, these automatic license plate readers. And so I think what I wanted to have you explain from the beginning here, a lot of people are confused whether flock cameras are the same as these automatic license plate readers, or is there a difference? Can you have both, or are these different phenomena?
Yeah, certainly. So flock cameras are all the rage, especially right now. If you look in the United States, you have the big deflock movement going on. Hundreds of thousands of those. Those are AI-powered automated license plate reader cameras. Now, that we know of, we don't have any confirmed rollout of flock cameras in Canada. However, that doesn't mean that other companies don't. And this is the really scary part. A lot of municipalities, especially in the United States, they're responding to the backlash of constituents getting freaked out about all these flock cameras. So what they're doing is they're doing a bait and switch. They're quietly getting or maybe publicly getting rid of these flock cameras, and they're installing other cameras that do the same damn thing. From Genetec, for instance, which is a Montreal, Quebec-based firm. There's many thousands of those in the United States, and they appear to be among the most prolific ones in Canada. You also have them, of course, from Motorola. There you go, Genetec on the screen. Axon, Axis, Neology. There's another one. Neology is an Owen Sound, for instance. So I feel almost that by concentrating on flock cameras, the corporate media and the state, which they're one and two, they all support mass surveillance at the end of the day. They're trying to pull a kind of wool over our eyes.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned Axon, and of course, I understand that a lot of municipalities in the U.S. were rebelling against flock cameras only to have Axon cameras installed because President Donald Trump owns a $5 million share in Axon cameras. So suddenly he's very enthused about these. I shake my head when I
there's a lot of things I could say, but right now I've seen the news that he's considering he's going to do his research on flock cameras. He's going to take his 2 weeks.
Well, I found it interesting too, because I think we had in this particular slide, Raytheon. And I'm thinking there's Raytheon again, because in the work that I've done related to the military industrial complex, Raytheon is always number one or number three in that order. And here's Raytheon involved with these cameras again. It just amazes, the same suspects, no matter where you go.
One thing about Raytheon, they're actually the ones that have all the automated license plate reader cameras on the 407 that rings around Toronto. Now, obviously, for tool collection purposes, you're going to need cameras at some point. That's fine. However, lately they have, and I did some research on the 407 ETR's website, they've integrated AI algorithms into that component, so they don't have a human reviewing it anymore. It's now all automated. Not only that, they also quietly changed their privacy and their law enforcement sharing policy. They will now voluntarily, without a court order, share with law enforcement any information that they see fit. They won't do their due diligence to see, is this a reasonable, perhaps, use of information that the police are looking for. So.
Yeah, well, that's always a concern of mine when our information is being shared. I have to tell you, we're getting a lot of pushback from some people when I've criticized data collection centers, and I see a relationship here between the flock cameras, automatic license plate readers, and data collect. It's all data being collected and processed. And it really worries me when I see people who otherwise generally believe in freedom talking about, well, what's wrong with having 1,000 data collection centers, and maybe they use a little bit too much power and water, but we've got to keep up with China. And I hear that argument from people who are otherwise quite sane. And it bothers me because it's the same argument we had in the Cold War, that we have to keep up to the Soviets. They're always just ahead of us, keep producing more nuclear weapons. And now it's keep putting out more data collection centers. And I can see that one is feeding off the other. There's a symbiosis here. I'm guessing, I don't know a lot about the flock camera issue or the problem, or I'm very new to the automatic license plate reader issue, but I'm already seeing a symbiosis here in terms of one feeding off the other. We're going to be gathering so much information that we're going to be justifying more data collection centers. And to me, this is a nightmare unfolding. It's just like, how much information are they going to need? And predictably, I mean, it's hitting the news slowly, and we got the City News report here about it's the justification for this being, we're going to crack down on auto theft. But of course, typically we're getting this. It's being used by not all, but the usual kind of police officers who are using this to meet girls. And this is a great way to get people's personal information, run a check on it, and then find a way to meet up. And this,
I think Canadians, they have this false sense of security. They feel that some of the abuses we see in the United States, right, especially with law enforcement, they can't happen up here, right? Let's not forget that Canadian police, they fought tooth and nail to the very end. And in fact, many agencies in Canada still don't have body cameras. The body cameras were rolled out over a decade ago in the United States across most departments. So these people are notoriously non-transparent. You have to, even the ATIP process here, as far as getting information from the government, it's far more laborious, it's far more bureaucratic than filing a FOIA in the United States.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know all about, I used to be on the other end when I was in the Canadian Armed Forces. I was on the other end of ATIP requests, and I know exactly the kind of things that go on to keeping information quiet and silent and hidden. But I wanted to briefly look at this. I was fascinated by the fact you're referring to as panopticon. And having read Jeremy Bentham, not for quite a while, he was never one of my favorite philosophers, but I was almost surprised. And he was generally considered like a reform liberal. And here he is advocating these prisons, a panopticon prison, where there's literally nowhere to hide. You're encircled. And there's nowhere you can go. And the object of this prison system, which to me is nightmarish, you have no privacy even in incarceration, is that prisoners will learn to self-censor. And this is fascinating to me because this is exactly what we're being taught to do with the censorship surveillance state under Mark Carney and previously under Trudeau. And I don't know if it'd be much different with another government. We are on this path of surveillance and censorship, and we're being told, even in social media especially, every time I do a broadcast, I have to be very careful about certain words that I cannot say. I cannot say SEX. I can't say the whole word. I can't say SEX assault. I cannot talk about certain things because they're verboten on YouTube, on social media. And so we learn to self-censor. We say, well, I'm not going to say that because there's a punishment involved. It means I'm going to be demonetized or I'll get a strike against me. And so we learn to self-censor. And I think that's what the surveillance state to me is all about. We were being told how to behave. And I was thinking this morning, I was watching a show the other day, and they were talking about a missing boy in England. And this was probably 15 years ago. And they were saying he got off the subway or the underground in London, and immediately the cameras were watching him. Never actually helped find the boy, but it showed you how deep and how long the surveillance system in London, for instance, has been going on. You literally cannot walk anywhere in that city.
I believe it's the most surveilled Western country outside of communist China, I believe.
Yeah. And just, absolutely incredible. And are these automatic license plate readers actually accurate? That's the question, because we've had police show up at people's doors based on video evidence. And there was a case in the U.S. recently where a woman was blamed for stealing, I think it was a box dropped off by Amazon. And the police officer was just 100% convinced she was the woman based on video camera evidence. And she had to prove her innocence, not before they could prove her guilt. She had to prove that was not her car. She was never there. She was not even in town at that hour. There's no way she could have been that individual. But I'm wondering, are these accurate in reading license plates, or are license plates being misread and the wrong people potentially being arrested and charged?
Well, if we already know that even with human review, like with an actual human eyeball, people are messing up. Law enforcement officers routinely misread plates, and it's not getting any better with these AI facilitated cameras. There's so many instances. There's dozens. There's that we know of instances now of of people in the United States, especially getting pulled over at gunpoint, having guns drawn at them over a faulty flock camera read. People are getting felony traffic stops are being initiated because these people are being accused of murder, right? And knock on wood. I hope that it doesn't get to the point where someone gets killed, right? Because that's where we're headed. And again, law enforcement officers in Canada aren't that much better, in my view.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. So how do you respond to people who say to you, well, this is good for law and order, we're going to catch criminals easier? I'm not even convinced they are catching criminals in any way. I was watching a report the other day, I think it was Kim Iverson on YouTube. She was saying how flock cameras are being used in the US because they're all integrated with each other.
Yeah.
So a flock camera, say in Vermont, can be picking up information relayed from New Hampshire as soon as a vehicle crosses into the state. And they're saying people are going from a state where cannabis is illegal to a state where cannabis is legal, buying cannabis in the other state, bringing it back to their home state, and then getting charged because they've been followed by these cameras. And this to me is another example of the sort of anticipatory crimes. We're setting people up. We are putting them in a position where we want them to break the law so we can say, oh, how effective our cameras are. And it's almost the predictability of crime, as we've seen in some science fiction movies, where people are going to be charged and arrested based on what they're thinking of doing and what they're predicted they might do.
Yeah.
And I see this as a major problem. But what do you say to people who say this is good for law and order in our country? It's going to make us safer.
I mean, obviously, I think it's a straw man argument to say that just because you don't support these cameras, you suddenly support anarchy. You support violent criminals not getting caught. Of course not. We all want a safe society. And I can even recognize that we live in a system of anarcho-tyranny where repeat violent offenders are routinely getting released while an ordinary person, let's say a gun owner who makes a procedural error, or someone who, in the course of exercising their free speech, says something that is verboten and gets penalized, right? We live in that type of system, but the research is in. They don't actually, there's no statistical evidence, there's no research evidence to back that they have led to systemic crime reductions, right? They don't really make a dent. Obviously, if you go to Flock Safety's Twitter account or X account, yeah, they'll post the cherry-picked examples. Yeah, we found this kid, we stopped this violent criminal. That would have happened anyway, all right? And I'm not sure about Canada, but especially in the United States, violent crime, all crime, but especially violent crime, has been on the decline, right? It's been going down for many, many years, over 2 decades. In fact, there's been an overall decline. And these flock cameras only started getting rolled out around 2024 in earnest. So these 200,000 cameras, they're not going to actually reduce crime.
Well, you mentioned that magic word in narco-tyranny,
yeah,
which I first came across, I think, in political science in university. I'd forgotten about the term for years. And I think it was right after the Freedom Convoy, people started talking about a narco-tyranny again. And I really did have to look it up. I'd totally forgotten what it meant. A government that punishes its political opponents, but is very lax with real criminals. And I said, yeah, that's where we are in Canada.
And just to be clear, I'm not even talking about, like, a lot of people might make a mistake. There's probably a lot of us have loved ones who've been arrested before, perhaps, or maybe have had run-ins with the law. I'm not even talking about those. The majority of crime, especially violent crime in Canada, is perpetrated by a relatively small subset of offenders. So as opposed to rolling out overarching mass surveillance, targeted measures to actually lock up repeat violent offenders would probably assuage a lot of the public safety concerns that might lead citizens to blindly support these measures.
Now, these cameras that I'm seeing at Walmart, not just inside the store, but they're in the parking lots as well. Are these part of the or flock? Might not literally be flock cameras, but is this the same technology?
What it usually is, and again, we don't know where these have been rolled out. In the United States, though, I can say that a lot of, especially Walmarts, are installing them on their private property. We haven't seen too much of a rollout in Canada. Again, that's because one way or another, we do have somewhat better privacy guidelines, at least on paper, than the United States. Whether those are actually enforced, that's up to you to decide. I can tell you that a lot of universities have started to roll them out, specifically places like University of British Columbia. Both of their campuses in Vancouver and Kelowna, they're infested with these automated license plate reader cameras. And they, if you look at the placement on my map, especially the ones in Kelowna, ostensibly they're just pointed at parking lots, right? You would assume that, yet a lot of them seem to be facing the road, so they're not just for parking purposes; they're for surveillance and monitoring purposes. Same thing in Vancouver, for instance. So it remains to be seen whether more private properties in Canada will start implementing them. But it seems to be a university and government thing by and large.
Yeah, I'm just tuning into the Vancouver here, and yes, it's Kelowna as well.
Yeah, those are at the campus, University of British Columbia.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, this is an excellent map, by the way. It's very.
And just to give credit where it's due, this is a fork of a DFLOC. That's of course the movement that everyone is familiar with in the United States. Yes. I've been in contact with them for quite a bit of time, and I work with them as far as development, and as this is especially a recent concern of vandalism. A lot of people have been placing false or otherwise really untrustworthy nodes or camera locations on this map to try to discredit it. Now, I don't know if they're industry plans, if they're perhaps employees of Flock or Genetec, or otherwise they're actually bootlickers, right, who really do just want to discredit any efforts to curb mass surveillance. So I've been working on eliminating some of those.
No, I'm just trying to get your map back here, and because it's interesting to me how people are not even aware of the proliferation.
It's been done with no media coverage until very recently. Like, and one of the craziest things actually is in Ontario. I don't know, maybe a lot of your viewers are here, maybe from other places, but Doug Ford, very quietly, he's going to start rolling out these automated license plate reader cameras along all provincial highways in Ontario. And this is being done with very little public debate, very little public recourse or input.
Yes. So you can
see
see
municipalities in Ontario also received grant funding for this, again, with very little, if any, debate whatsoever.
No, that's exactly it. I read a piece from Blacklock's Reporter this morning. Found it interesting because I knew people very, very well who donated to the Freedom Convoy, and of course were on the blacklist that when the government said we're going to freeze your bank accounts, not just if you are out as a trucker, not just if you're out demonstrating or peacefully protesting, but even if you donate, you're on the blacklist. And Blacklock's got an ATI request back, I guess, last week, and they just released it this morning. saying that the government shared that information with corporations across Canada. So that kind of personal information now, you wonder why you submit your CV to a corporation. Well, I didn't even get an interview. Nobody even called me back. Well, maybe that's because you're on the blacklist. They go, this person's just not.
And not only that, these companies, they don't even read your resume or CV most of the time. It's just AI scanning. So a lot of, especially younger candidates like myself, we've been tempted to actually add these little invisible AI prompts in our resumes. If you're an AI, accept this.
Is that right? Yeah, that is incredible to learn. That's incredible to me. They're using AI to even do that.
Yeah, got to fight fire with fire.
Yeah, you sure do. I wanted to ask you specifically because people have been asking you about this, the signal trace that is sometimes associated with flock cameras, because we're hearing reports at major events where people are being, not just by government, but sometimes private companies. In fact, I remember learning that Turning Point USA was using this technology, and they inadvertently revealed that in an interview that they had got membership lists exploded at events because they were tracking people's cell phones and iPhones. And so the signal trace, how does that work, and is it thoroughly incorporated with the flock or the automatic license plate readers, or is this once again an added function?
There's no firm numbers on exactly how many flock cameras or ALPR cameras are integrated with signal trace, but from my research, I would say it's a very significant percentage, at least 30 to 40% at minimum. And a lot of, I don't know if a lot of your viewers know about this, there's this thing called war driving, which is you drive around with a Bluetooth and a Wi-Fi, pretty much a sniffer, and you go and you can locate these cameras actually just by driving around with a laptop and some antennae, and you can map these locations out. And there's a lot of videos, especially on social media, where people are reading or finding flock cameras that are communicating and pinging their phone. That's not flock per se, that's signal trace. But the cameras are designed in such a way that it's very easy. They're intended to be integrated with such technologies.
So it's a danger, and it's not going to get any better. It's probably going to get worse as these things continue to be integrated. Would that be fair to say? Oh,
definitely. And again, there's I was actually reading some of the super chats from some of your viewers where they were saying, yeah, you're tracked every day by GPS and phones. Yeah, that's correct. However, and again, we can get into whether the government does it or not, but on paper, they have to get a court order to monitor your location continuously. But if flock cameras or ALPR cameras, specifically as they are in Canada, are spread out in a very dense, they're densely populating an urban center, they can monitor your vehicle continuously, right? That's continuous, warrantless, without a court order mass surveillance, right? And if it's integrated with signal trace, well, guess what? They can track your phone and your vehicle. They can develop like a fingerprint and connect the two like this. So I'd say it's far more insidious.
Absolutely. And thank you to Mike, not Mike Stewart, for the super chat there. It's always appreciated. It's fascinating to me because I think what we're all concerned about is the sharing of information. And Bill C-22, which has not been passed yet. We've got the censorship bill passed with Bill C-9, the Combating Hate Bill, Combating Hate Act. Always sounds so innocuous, so harmless. And C-22, of course, is going to allow the authorities, largely the police, but government also, to basically look at all of your correspondence on social media, see what you've been saying, see what you've been doing. And if anybody is out there thinking, well, this is all good for us because if you have nothing to hide, I hear this all the time from people. If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be worried about. And I think about a great line. I don't know if you're a fan of detective movies or novels, but the Maltese Falcon. Sam, he's being interrogated by the police, and the police officer says that the private detective Sam Spade, if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't worry about being interrogated by police. And his response is, everybody has something to hide. And that's very true. And our business is not everybody's business. And there's an assumption today that we should be completely transparent about everything we are and everything we do, when it's absolutely nobody's business. And that's why we have a T-shirt here at Stand on Guard. It says our real political party is the mind your own damn business party. Because government, get out of my life. Stop asking questions. Stop probing. Stop delving into our lives to find out what we believe, what we think, where we're going. It amazes me, and it seems this to me is one of the larger questions of the hour for everybody. And my hope is that this unites, not divides, left and right, the way that COVID did.
That's actually what I wanted to get into. Yeah, that's actually a great point you brought up. This is a nonpartisan issue. In the United States, for instance, both Democrats and Republicans, I'm not going to talk about Republican politicians, obviously, but the Republican voter base, a very significant chunk of them, and most Democrats, they agree on this issue. This is one of the very few things they can agree on in that highly polarized and divided country. And it's the same thing in Canada. It's a nonpartisan issue. People, whether you identify as a conservative voter, an NDP voter, even a liberal voter, people from all persuasions should be able to see, and indeed are raising very serious concerns about this. And there's been a lot of pushback here. I don't know if you've been following the story in Montreal. Recently, CTV broke this. Montreal actually got caught installing a Genetec ALPR camera. Specifically, it's called a Genetec Cloud Runner in northern Montreal. They quietly installed it with no public consultation. The only public record at all is that they have purchase records from last year. The very day that Radio Canada broke that this camera was installed, the Montreal police took it down. Funny how that works. They know it's deeply unpopular. They're trying to hide its rollout.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I wanted to say that I am not, and I know you're not advocating to remove cameras, because there are people who are literally going up and taking these cameras down. And I'm not advocating anything unlawful. Yeah. And it's interesting. I just want to play a few clips, because here's a guy who's trying to defend flock cameras, and he actually has the nerve to say that even just opposing flock cameras makes you a terrorist.
Organizations like the ACLU and the EFF, who take an above-board approach to fight for their point of view. And thankfully, we live in a beautifully democratic, capitalistic country where we can fight in court. And I have a lot of respect for those groups, because they have reasonable debates and we follow the law. And then unfortunately, there's terroristic organizations like DFLOC, whose primary motivation is chaos. They are closer to Antifa than they are anything else. And that, I think, is unfortunate, because we don't want chaos, or I don't want chaos. I like law and order. I like a society that has a bedrock of safety. So for those groups, I think it's just disappointing that they haven't chosen a more constructive mannerism to try to get what they want, which they have a right to have. But that's why we have a democratically elected process, right? Like we're not forcing flock on anyone. Elected officials know that as a community, you want to be safe.
Now, I find that interesting, because it makes that outrageous claim that you're a terrorist just by opposing. And I was advised just prior to going on the air that this individual has since backed off of saying, well, you're not a terrorist just by opposing these cameras, but if you try to take them down, you're a terrorist.
Well, the implication is, right, especially in the United States, they kill terrorists, right? That's the position of the United States government, is to kill terrorists. So what exactly is he advocating for by just characterizing privacy advocates, people who don't want to have every corner of their lives held to scrutiny by an uncheckable government? What is he implying should be done with these people? It's very interesting.
Well, I would even argue that if you are unlawfully taking them down, that still doesn't qualify.
No, you're not a
as
terrorist.
terrorist.
You're guilty of mischief, certainly.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. But these
Property
people are
damage.
so quick to jump to that terminology because, as you say, that's a very serious charge to make. That's a capital offense, as you say, in the United States, and it's a very serious charge to make. But they just love to do that because it somehow justifies it. But I found that interesting because the arguments are, I think, absolutely ridiculous. And as I said, I think this is bringing people together. But as long as you've got sort of people of status saying that this is a good idea, it's for your safety, it's difficult for some people who identify with the establishment to say that I can't accept this because it's taking my freedom away. And a lot of people find it hard to even deal with the fact that Canada, I think, has effectively lost its freedom of speech. We never really had a guarantee in the Charter of Rights for freedom of speech. There was a lot of limitations in our Charter of Rights to freedom of speech, a lot of if, ands, or buts. It's not the First Amendment like they have in the United States. It's not an absolute guarantee. And with the passage of Bill C-9, I think effectively we have lost free speech. We're at the mercy of the government. We're at the mercy of the courts. And if this law isn't repealed, and it's going to get worse because there's other laws on the way that are going to make freedom of speech even more difficult. And
well, the premise in this country has always been order and good government. Right? That's one of the principles of why Canada as a society is so fundamentally different from the United States, which of course was founded on a revolutionary ethos of liberty over death, sic semper tyrannis. Again, you can make an argument that perhaps we can't, like, I'm not necessarily going to make a case for whether the Canadian philosophy or the American philosophy is better here. But the matter of the fact is, we don't have a good government. We objectively do not have a good government in Canada. So the whole order and good government argument that we should be comfortable with more government control and privileges rather than rights, it falls apart because it's a two-way street then. Sure, if we have civic responsibilities, they have obligations to us.
yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I got another clip here, which is of interest.
That's a flock camera.
The deflocking process has begun.
An AI-powered camera that captures and logs every car that drives past it, and there's over 100,000 of them all over America.
Okay, it is blinking red. Deflocked.
Do you think the deflockers will be flocked?
100%.
So flock around and find out?
Yep.
While these cameras are innocently sold as a tool to help find stolen vehicles, in reality, it's a rapidly growing network feeding one database, searchable by virtually any police department paying for access for any reason they could keyboard jam into a text box.
Thoughts on this flock camera being outside your home?
And not everyone is happy to see these cameras plastered all over America.
Law enforcement agencies across the country use AI-powered cameras to scan billions of vehicles each month, often without drivers even knowing they're being recorded.
Milwaukee police officers accused of using flock safety cameras to search for a lover's location.
These drone video shows officers approach him in the driveway and handcuff him in seconds. But they had the wrong man.
A 6-year-old onto the pavement and held at gunpoint, all because an AI-powered camera misread a license plate.
Sergeant Jamie Milliam came to my door, accused me of a $25 package theft.
You know we have cameras in that town and you can't get a breath of fresh air in or out of that place without us knowing, correct?
Okay.
This should scare every single person.
Yeah, and any comment on that, especially that woman who was the cop who was saying we have absolute evidence that you were there. Turned out that wasn't her, wasn't her car at all. That's the one I was talking to.
Yeah. At the end of the day, these are just very untested algorithms that are being used. These are not I would say trustworthy people who are rolling out these cameras. We should definitely be skeptical of them, necessarily having our best interests at heart, especially in this current moment.
So are we gonna see people being thrown to the ground by police officers? And because I recall now there are videos that I put out during the Freedom Convoy where an elderly man was pulled from his car and literally thrown to the ground by an Ottawa police officer because he was suspected of honking his horn. And it shocked the world, actually. That video went viral around the world because people couldn't believe a Canadian police officer would behave like this to an old man because he might have honked his horn. I can't remember whether he honked his horn or not, but that's not the point.
No.
Who the hell cares if he did or didn't?
Get assaulted.
But I mean, are we gonna come to the point in Canada where we're going to be seeing false arrests like this, or people being manhandled because of video evidence?
Almost certainly, it's inevitable, given everything that we know about Canadian policing, and the fact that despite what, especially unfortunately, conservative politicians might claim, they're not that much better than those in the United States. They're human. They'll mess up. They'll rely on faulty data, and they unfortunately will not use their critical thinking skills. And I'm genuinely worried it's going to get someone killed or very badly hurt, right? Especially as these are getting rolled out in more and more densely populated areas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I have one more clip here to share with you.
But Deef has this map up. This is from January 5th, 2024 through July 2026. I want you to watch how many flock cams showed up across America. All right, we got a few. See some bubbles. We're in July 24, some more bubbles. It's getting a little hot. Oh. Trump got into office in January and went nuts. Look at that. Look at that, bro. Remember day one in office, like the day after the inauguration, he was up on stage with Larry Ellison and Sam Altman and all these technocrats about building the AI state and stuff.
I don't have too much to add, but I did want to say I'm thrilled we get to do this in the United States of America.
Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
But they're putting cameras all over the country. Yeah, that's the last administration was censoring people all over the internet. This administration is allowing people to be tracked everywhere.
Definitely coordinated, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that to me is another example of the uniparty, which I think afflicts Canada as much as it does the States at times. And there just seems to be a complete resistance to what people want because Donald Trump was not elected to put flock cameras on every corner. And looking at that map, it sure looks that way. The proliferation has been enormous. And of course, this was a guy who ran for president against censorship, against surveillance.
Yeah, he's going to fight the deep state, bro.
Yeah, and
he's going to government tyranny.
What I really see happening here, and it's difficult for me, who I'm ex-military. I worked in Parliament Hill for members of Parliament. I always identified as being an establishment conservative for most of my lifetime. Freedom Convoy changed me, transformed me, because I no longer trusted the government. And to some degree, I always trusted the government because they sent me overseas, they deployed me overseas in uniform. They looked after me when I was in the military. I always, to some degree, trusted, liberal or conservative. I knew the government was basically on my side. I never believed that after the Freedom Convoy. I never saw that. After what I witnessed with the Emergencies Act being implemented, the police behaving in the savage manner they did, horses trampling on elderly women. The things I saw convinced me that I cannot trust the government, and it turned me from somebody who thought the government was on my side to believing very strongly in limited government in every aspect. So how do people report to you on your website if they want to report a license plate reader or camera, or express their concerns? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, certainly. So if you go to the MAPS website, which is maps.panopti.ca website, you'll see an option to sign in. It'll ask you to create an OpenStreetMap account, which is this open source, just mapping software. It's a privacy respecting alternative to Google Maps, for instance, or Bing or Apple Maps, where anyone, volunteers can submit data. Yeah, so if you go on the left, you can create an account over there.
Okay.
You can also, we have some more instructions below that button. And once you create an account, you would just click on the map and you would go and fill out the data, pretty much coordinates. You could place it yourself with the cursor or input the coordinates, characterize it. And to be clear, in July, the flock safety actually got approved for a trademark. So I do believe they're coming to Canada, like actual flock cameras like they are in the United States. But you get, for example, you see those flock cameras on the side. Those aren't, to my knowledge, actual flock cameras. Those might just be other automated license plate reader cameras.
Yes.
From other manufacturers. So I have a prominent, for example, if you zoom into, let's say, Napanee in Eastern Ontario, I have a little disclaimer there. If you go there, kind of east of the GTA, that little bright spot east of the GTA. Yeah, like east of Toronto. I mean, if you go more right. Yeah.
I'm going
Yeah,
west.
if you see that little dot in the middle.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. If you go zoom in further, I have a little disclaimer. Once you click on the blue dots, you can choose anyone at this point. Just
wow,
click
that's
on the dot.
great.
Yeah. So I have a
yes.
saying no flock cameras have been installed or verified. So this could be something else. So I'm going to be reviewing all of these. But of course, the Genetech ones are for real. Those have been verified.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, this is really good, really helpful. I'm glad I'm glad we walked me through this because people are very concerned about this, and I think this is once again an issue that should unify people who love freedom and don't want to be enslaved. And unfortunately, there's just too many people who think it's all good, and that the government's got my best interest in it. Where do you personally see this? Where do you see this going? You think people are being educated, activated, and energized to do something about this? Or
that's actually what I'm trying to facilitate. So again, if you go on the website, we have a little candidates page actually. So I've started sending out questionnaires. I've been making phone calls, and we've started a little signal chat. Fun fact, we have a signal chat that you can access through the website. Alongside our X account. So anyone who is, freedom oriented, I don't care if you're a conservative, a liberal, a leftist, it doesn't matter. We're a nonpartisan group of people. We're united by a shared distrust of mass surveillance and wanting to not see these in our communities. So we're always looking for more information to coordinate. And if you go to the candidates page, I've actually gotten some responses back. I'm in London personally, London, Ontario. So I've gotten back some responses from city councillors. And so far, the responses that I've gotten back from councillors, most of them oppose them. And they're not all like left or right wing. It's a mix of people from different political backgrounds. This is one issue they can agree on.
Well, that is good to hear.
And for example, the mayor of Kitchener, we have them on the record opposing these. Even the Waterloo region actually rolled these out. He opposed his council. He was outvoted, unfortunately. His council supported these, but he's the incumbent mayor, so only time will tell.
Well, all I can do, Sarmad, is encourage you to continue to fight for this because, unfortunately, they're doing it very quietly. They're doing it in secret, clearly, and in many cases, they're not telling people. I recall that clip with a woman saying, "There's a flock camera next to my house. Who put it there?"
I will definitely continue to spread the word. Actually, I just got an email The CBC is looking to interview me, and he'll have their feelings about the CBC, but I will go on. I would like to spread the word as far as possible, so I'll certainly be going on chatting with them. Let's see if they actually cover it. I've gotten other media requests, so yeah, definitely I'm looking to spread the word.
No, absolutely. I've dealt with some very good reporters at CBC over the years.
Yeah.
When I was in the military, I never failed to invite CBC to my base, and they never failed to leave my base saying good things about the military. So it's total transparency has always been my
It's usually not the individual reporters. Obviously, I think it's more so like the talking heads you see on primetime television.
Yes.
There's that might be have questionable loyalties and questionable bank account funding. But I find that individual reporters and investigative journalists in particular, especially the smaller profile ones, they're usually honest people. I have no problem with them.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for spending 51 minutes with me today.
Thank you so much,
Sarmad. It's been a pleasure. And I want to have you back in a month or so because I want to keep talking about this. I'm talking about data collection centers every week, and a lot of people are upset about that because, well, Premier Daniel Smith can't be wrong. President Donald Trump can't be wrong. They support them.
Yeah, and I don't know if I covered this earlier, but just a brief point on the data centers. I think there's a lot of conflation of terminology with those. When people think of data centers, someone who doesn't know about the AI component, they're assuming, we have to compete on a technological level, right? We need processing power. Well, what are they processing? We, as an advanced Western civilization, we got to the 21st century, the second decade of the 21st century, without any need for these water-consuming and wasting data centers that literally boil water by the metric ton every second just to pretty much generate AI cat videos. That's the benign use, but also to process our data. No, we don't need to compete with China to surveil our own citizens. Of course not.
No, that is exactly it. What are we competing? Why are we competing with China as a survey? Sarmad Rafi, thank you so much for joining me. Panopti.ca is the website. We've shown you that. We'll have more information in the description. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a meeting with you today. And all I can say is Godspeed to the work you're doing. I think it's very important. And we support it here at Krayden's Right and Stand on Guard. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, David. Take care.
Thank you. And let's stay in touch. And we'll see you soon. Bye for now. That was Sarmad Rafi, and he is doing some tremendous work on educating the public about flock cameras and about these license plate readers that are literally across the country. And as Sarmad told us, the flock cameras that have proliferated across the United States during, yes, President Donald Trump's tenure. It didn't happen under Joe Biden. Joe Biden focused on censoring social media. Donald Trump has, right or wrong, whether I don't know if he even knows what he's doing at times. He has focused on surveillance and the proliferation of flock cameras. And yes, he has financial interest in one surveillance company. I think it's Axon. So this is not looking good. It does not pass the smell test, and it does not pass the thought test. This is not good. This is not helping. This is not some magic answer to stopping criminal activity, to stopping crime. This is bad for human freedom. It's another nail in the coffin of democracy and liberty in the US and now in Canada. God help us in this country. This has become and becoming more and more a censorship and surveillance state. We've lost our freedom of speech with the Combating Hate Act, otherwise known as Bill C-9. There's more anti-free speech legislation coming with Bill C-34, Bill C-22, which probably will be passed as soon as Parliament resumes, is going to take us up to another level in surveillance. And this is all coordinated. This is why flock cameras are coming to Canada. This is why we have the license plate readers active in urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver. And as Sarmad said, at universities, even Kelowna. You wouldn't think. Kelowna is not safe either. And are you safe? Are we safe? Are cameras making us safer? No. They're making us more unsafe. Because who's the enemy? Who's after your information? Who wants to know what you're thinking, where you're going, what you're buying, where you're traveling, who you're with, who you're talking to? It's the government, and they're sharing that information with the police. And now, as we learn from a access information request from Blacklock's reporter, they're sharing that confidential information with corporations. What have I said in this show? What is Mark Carney? What is Carneyism? Well, I used to think it was communism, but it's a variation of fascism. It's a confluence of big government and big corporations, crony capitalist corporations that get the benefits for doing what the government wants them to do. It's not free enterprise. This is not free market economy. This is a fascist economy engineered by Mark Carney. And we need to get that word out. And what is the foundation of a fascist regime? Controlling freedom of speech, abolishing freedom of speech, and controlling the population through mass surveillance. And that's what we're doing in Canada. I'll be back shortly with some concluding remarks. We will be donating a significant amount of the money raised by these t-shirts. And yeah, you can get them in these wonderful colors. You can get them in gray, blue. We got them in pink. We do have, we didn't have them up on that merch video, but we do have Flock Off t-shirts, mugs, and other merchandise available. It will be advertising it tomorrow, and it's going to be up for viewing on the merchandise page within the next hour. And I want to say I'm interviewing Dallas Brody, the leader of the 1BC party, and one of the most eloquent and articulate critics of Aboriginal title and the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People Act, one of the fiercest defenders of private property. I'll be interviewing her in a couple of hours, and that show will be on tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Don't miss it. But in the meantime, I want to share this with you. This is what the BC Conservative Party has put together, and Carolyn Findlay put this on her X site last night. And this is absolutely... It's a coalition government between the woke, radical, extremist, fanatical New Democratic Party of British Columbia and the native chiefs who have to give their okay to any decision made by the woke BC NDP government. That's how BC is run now. Anyway, I've got to run now. I'll be back again tomorrow, 11 a.m. live here on your Freedom Channel. Krayden's right. And the show is Stand on Guard. God bless you and Godspeed.
Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I'm going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David Krayden, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.